don't have to be grand gestures. We don't have to, abandon our life, sell our house and give it to charity and go off and work somewhere in some sort of extreme situation. It's a choice, it's a possibility. But it's not what's required of us. What's required is to see, if that's something that's not there, how do I bring it in? How do I take the risk that if I'm not just concerned about myself, to see what happens? There's an amazing, a wonderful amount of uplift and connection that comes through that. Acting out of concern for others rather than for oneself. But for most of us, probably that's actually not the bigger issue here. Most of us, the tendency for a lot of us at least in the West, and certainly many who come into contact or seek out spiritual teaching and practice, the tendency is much more towards self-negation, not excessive self-concern. Or certainly they have equal degrees of expression and impact or influence in us, in our lives. Self-negation, whereby rather than in the self-concern, it's all about me, we actually start to imagine or believe it's all about someone else, that it's not about me at all. That somehow I am not important. That the only way I can have any sense of importance is by looking out for others. Or any sense of value or validity or meaningfulness is only in looking out for others. And we can hear spiritual teachings that suggest that somehow, the sense of self that we've inhabited isn't substantial or real. And this is true and profound teaching. But we can take that in such a way as suggest that therefore I should ignore myself. Or therefore I should somehow ignore or suppress or deny the needs, the legitimate needs or aspirations of this human being. And somehow place the needs or the aspirations of others in front of ours. I think that's one that a lot of us recognise as Westerners. Our conditioning easily leads us in that direction, particularly if we're somewhat self-reflective and aware. We can notice the unskillfulness and the painfulness of that excessive self-concern, and yet sometimes seek to replace it by its opposite, which is in fact much the same. So if you notice that it's really hard for you to take your needs and place them at the front, sometimes, going against the stream says, okay, let's try it and see. What would it be like to rush to the front of the lunch queue and get there and get your choice of all those yummy things? Imagine how hard that would be for most of us, to be seen, to be doing that. We wouldn't mind doing it, but if it's being seen that's really hard, isn't it? It's like about our self-images, the fear of what will be said or thought about us. So I kind of wonder what that's like for you to contemplate. To actually consider that the being that you call yourself is equally to be cherished and cared for and looked after, and sometimes given first priority. It becomes unhealthy when it becomes a pattern, when we get caught in a groove, and it doesn't matter which way the groove goes. When it becomes a groove, it becomes always, or almost always, this way. And if it's always about me, it's a problem. And if it's never about me, it's also a problem, in terms of that self-regard or self-negation. So what Dharma teaching is actually pointing to is the freedom to at times say, yeah, I can do without here. And at times, I'm having it, sorry, you're not getting any. Or not quite like that maybe, but maybe it might feel that way sometimes. Now what do you do if there's just one biscuit on the plate? Really? What do you do? Well, what's it like to pick it up and eat it? and really enjoy it. And there's still some people to come, but somebody's got to enjoy it. Because so much of the momentum that pulls us, that pushes us, that drives us, hinges on this particular way in which we separate out and give different value to what we call me and what we call everything else or everyone else. If we have a clear sense of how to say, yeah, this is what's important, this is and that's not, we kind of know how to go about our life. That's what I do. I take the first biscuit and the last one if I can get it. Or I don't. No, I just leave it for other people. They'll get there. They'll be all right. I'll be fine. And it becomes kind of repetitive. It becomes familiar. It feels safe, but ultimately, as I think I mentioned this morning, it becomes dead or deadening. Not dead in terms of fatality, but dead in terms of without the aliveness, without the fullness of life's freedom being expressed through our choice and our action. And how we are impacted by that is this profound sense of dissatisfaction that we can experience. And also with it, fear. An immense amount of fear that we can't step out of what we know. We can't try something different. What tends to imprison us in the grooves is the fear of that which is not familiar to us and not known. Even if the familiar pattern is painful, embarrassing, unpleasant, at least we know ourselves here. We know how to do this one. So, we are asked to really look at the way in which we seek comfort and safety over truth and freedom. This is really the essential question of our life. The degree to which we seek comfort and safety, security, familiarity over truth and freedom. This is the degree to which we don't allow ourselves to receive what life has to offer us. It's not an easy undertaking to commit oneself in this way, but it's a worthy one. And I'd like to share a story with you that it's an experience that happened a few years ago now for me. Give me some real insight into this whole relationship to knowing and certainty and how strong it is. I was I was in Australia at a place called a monastery called Wat Buddhadharma in the Darug National Park of New South Wales. And I was going to be teaching a retreat in a day or two. I just arrived and they took me up to the place I was going to be staying, a little kuti. And they basically left me there. It was great, it was a lovely place. I was very happy to be there. I thought I'd go out for a run, as I like to do. And later in the afternoon I went out. It was a totally new area, but it was quite lovely. And so I was running up this path for a while. 15, 20, 30 minutes or so, I'm not sure. Probably gone a few miles. And then I saw what appeared to be, because it was very dense enclosed forest, and I saw what appeared to be a ridgeline up above the path with these trees on it, but it looked like if I got up there I could get a view of what was around me, and I really wanted to have a view of what was around me. So I just took a quick check of my bearings, and I'm quite familiar with the wilderness and that sort of environment, so I just quite happily sort of went up this hill off the track up to the top, and